Robots, being logical creations, can't be necessarily good or evil. All they can do is follow their programming, wherever that may lead. One of the more interesting aspects in science fiction is the treatment of robots. Sometimes they're a sympathetic character, sometimes they're weapons or tools being used by other people, sometimes they're a terrible menace that must be stopped. It all depends on the intent of the story. And one of the aspects of the story is the use of an underclass to look at societal ills. And that's what we're looking at today. Gentlefolk, robotic gentlefolk, and something in between. 1962's Creation of the Humanoids. Our story begins in the future! More specifically, several years after a devastating nuclear war. Most of the ecosystem was destroyed, humanity was reduced by 92%, and the survivors have a very low birth rate, with radiation still present. In order to combat this situation, mankind created a series of increasingly sophisticated robots, up to the R-70, to rebuild society and enable them to hopefully survive and figure out a way to deal with the fact that the planet is kind of screwed up. As is often to be expected in this case, some people regard the robots as useful tools, and others see them as a potential threat, as has been the case with underclassed individuals for a very long time. One of the groups of people who are concerned about robots for the good of society, big glowing air quotes there, is the Society for the Preservation of Flesh and Blood, essentially the equivalent of the Klan, who regard robots as mere machines and are upset that they're becoming more and more human-like in appearance and behavior. Often referred to them for the derogatory term of clicker. And on this occasion, Craigus and an associate of his are performing their duties.
All right, let's see your assignment cards. What are you clickers doing out tonight?
We're on free time. We're not obligated to answer.
As a member of the Surveillance Committee of the Order of Flesh and Blood, I demand an answer.
We're going to the temple to be recharged.
I think I'll keep you here till your power runs out. How'd you like that?
I'd have to report such interference to the police.
Release them.
Was that satisfactory, Craigus?
Well, the order just wants to keep them mindful of their status. You overlooked one little thing, though.
What?
The robot that didn't talk had a forged card.
Forged? Why, he can be disassembled for that.
But it seems that Craigus may have some cause to be suspicious. For upon arriving at the Holy Temple, i.e. the main recharge station for these robots, we discover that the robot that did not speak has undergone some rather extensive reconstruction to look exactly like a human being. He's then taken to an associate of the robots, Dr. Raven, who is performing a very unusual experiment.
I never will get used to that artificial blood.
The lower types just tend to shut off their pain circuits when they get hurt. The blood forces them to report for repair.
I wish it were some other color.
The copper tubing turns it green. This may be our last transplant for a while. Our supplier was caught.
I didn't see it on telefax.
The Ministry of Information doesn't want it known that robots are dealing in robots. But only give the flesh and blooders something more to yell about.
They're a minority.
A loud minority.
Your supplier, will they take his identity?
His memory will be dispersed tomorrow. What a waste.
Why don't they just kill him? The effect of personal cessation is the same in either case. They just leave a hollow shell walking around.
He can still perform his duties.
But he's without a past, without hope. The dream gone.
Almost like being a robot, isn't it?
No offense.
I'm incapable of taking offense. But why is it the more we become like men, the more some of them hate us for it?
Men hate what they fear. You have perfect memory, infallible logic. You never tire. You're circuited against anger and violence.
And in your world, that leaves us pretty helpless.
We have to study for years to learn what you pick up by plugging into a brain for 2 hours.
We don't refer to the father-mother as a brain.
Your father-mother's an electronic computer, just a machine.
Your parents were machines. It's just that they were engineered with flesh and bones. Neither are ideal components.
You came off a production line.
I know who created me. Hollister Evans in the Mark 47. You have to accept your creator on faith.
Who created your creator?
Yours. You see, we are brothers, aren't we?
For the next several hours, he'll have only the most basic human instincts. Might even be drunk for a while. Then the thalamic circuit will filter in, and he'll have a perfect human memory. He'll be whoever he was.
A man. Capable of jealousy, hatred, deceit, murder. Most interesting.
What is?
Why men, having such negative qualities, feel so superior to us.
Too bad it isn't as easy to take those negative qualities out of men as it is to put them into robots. Flesh and blooders.
It's inevitable, we must accept it.
We've got to get out of here.
I'll turn him on. He might be able to pass. At least we can save him. We'll carry out our part of the bargain. I suggest you eliminate yourself.
No, I can't. You don't know what it is to die.
If you don't, they'll take your memory from you. You were speaking of personality cessation.
I just can't take my own life.
Maybe he has enough human instinct by now to...
Kill me! Kill me!
Accuse my sister of being in rapport with a clicker. I'll kill you, all right.
We'll take that one and the clicker with us. We'll leave the body of the old man here. And call the police.
Craigus, come here. This one's a robot, too.
You must be mistaken.
We opened up a gash in his head. If that skull isn't molybdic, I'll take another course in metallurgy.
So a robot finally became violent. There's no doubt that he killed the old man.
The discovery of this new type of human robot, designated as an R-96, sets the society all abuzz, and they're prepared to use this for their political benefit. Kratos, however, has another concern. It seems his sister, an early relative, is in rapport with a robot, essentially a romantic relationship. Attachments possibly optional. And he's understandably not happy about the situation. She, however, could not give two bolts about it.
Pax is more of a man than Miles. Or you could ever be.
I'll show you how much of a man he is. Stripped of his sham, he's not very pretty, is he? There, that's how much of a man he is.
Thanks, Craigus, for proving my point. Pax is much more of a man than you are. He could never do to you what you've just done to him. We fall in love when we see a part of ourselves reflected in another person. In the rapport operation, a part of me became Pax. I won't discuss this any further.
And I won't hear of it any further. I must go now.
May I go with you?
You find this atmosphere uncomfortable?
I'm fascinated by it. And by you. May I?
Would you?
The two leave, and despite certain ideological differences between them, they begin to fall in love. I suppose when you've got very few people in the world, you can't exactly afford to be choosy. And I'm talking about her choices, not his. When they're invited to go to the robot temple. When we get there, we find that Dr. Raven is there, looking suspiciously younger. And the robots have a certain news to share with Craigus.
I should have expected something like this after that clicker murdered the real Dr. Raven last night. You didn't bring us here just to let us go.
The murder of Dr. Raven was both unfortunate and unnecessary.
That attitude in a robot can get you divided into components.
Perhaps. Craigus, are you familiar with the R-96?
The Order knows they exist, and we know that you are... The real Dr. Raven was instrumental in their construction.
Creation of an R-96 requires a modified humanoid-type robot and the body of a human being which has been dead less than 6 hours.
What do? Change brains?
In effect. We perform a thalamic transplant, but that's a misnomer. We draw off everything that makes a man peculiar to himself. His learning, his memory, these interreacting constitute his personality, his philosophy, capability, and attitude. The human brain is merely the vault in which the man is stored.
And not a very ingenious vault.
Ingenious enough to create you clickers.
Creation is only the result of the fusion of facts which haven't been previously related.
Fascinating.
There's one other point that may be of interest to you.
What?
Tell him.
Craigus, you are a robot.
A clicker? Me? Now isn't that something? Now that you've found yourself capable of murder, I don't suppose anything as minor as an insult would offend your circuits.
Craigus, there are only 15 robots on this planet capable of acting against a human being. You are one of them. Maxine is another.
Look, you can tell the world I'm a clicker, but you can't tell me.
Craigus, they think we're something or someone else.
Well, that's exactly what's happened. And you've made some pretty damaging admissions. Clicker, you're in trouble.
Horace, would you prove the status of our friend, Craigus?
Proceed!
Don't be afraid, Craigus. Take it out. The blade, Craigus. Look at the blade.
Didn't feel a thing.
Reflex action. Cut off your pain relays.
I'm no clicker. R96, anything. I hate robots. I'm a leader in the Order of Flesh and Blood.
And the only robot who can claim that distinction.
I don't know what you're talking... I'm me.
Well, this is a lot to take in. Not only is he a member of this race that he's come to despise, but they've ruined his shirt.
Craigus, think back 6 months ago. Do you remember a certain day at your laboratory? The day you blacked out?
Of course, sir. Been working hard. My work in the day, the order at night, I must have fainted. But I got back to my apartment. I thought very well the next day.
That day, Craigus, you suffered a cerebral hemorrhage. You died.
I died. You performed that operation on me.
The father and mother informed us of your death immediately. We were able to retrieve your body before it was discovered, and the police informed of the fact. You were duplicated and transferred.
But what about his lovely companion?
Do you recall an unusual incident at Telefax about 3 months ago?
3 months? The bomb. In the routing room at Telefax. Of course.
Craigus remembers it too.
No, it couldn't have been then. Maxine, we were only trying to discourage the pro-integration editorials. The bomb... We thought there'd only be robots in the routing room.
But I was only stunned. I guess I went home.
He's all right.
You were killed. One of our robots brought what was left of you to us. We barely got you in time. We did make you a bit thinner. You had a tendency to be plump.
That's right. After that, my clothes didn't fit. Thank you.
Yes, of course, that's the most important thing, isn't it? Yeah. Never mind the fact that she was saved and turned into a robot, but they made her less plump. Priorities, lady, priorities.
How do you apologize to someone for killing them?
Ah, not to worry. Yeah, I thought so. Tim Hortons has a apology bouquet and a cookie assortment for just this occasion. Man, they think of everything. But exactly why have they been doing this?
The material of the human body can't exist with the radioactivity, and it isn't capable of adjusting fast enough to survive.
We're making headway.
When I perfected the thalamic transplant technique, these clickers knew about it in a day and a half.
But if you robots had the process, why did you risk using Raven? Why didn't you just do it yourself?
We tried. But the shock of dying and being resurrected as a robot was too severe. They re-died. A sort of an adjustment period was needed. Then Raven perfected a way to gap the memory so that the death experience was erased. The subject was spared the knowledge of his new type body until he was able to accept it safely. He refused to register the memory gap process, so we couldn't get hold of it.
If they didn't have the thought process to use on you, why didn't you die when you came to?
I originated the process. I understand it. I was pre-adjusted. I even made them agree to duplicate the body of my younger days when it became necessary.
Your death was necessary?
If I'd been taken alive and turned over to the police, my memory would have been dispersed and all of my unregistered formulas lost forever. But dead, they were able to save me and my memory.
How long have you had the process?
Almost a year. You two are the first full-cycle transplants.
What do you do now?
Wait for the leaders to die, and then reactivate them.
I love her.
And you?
I love him very much.
And that's a lot for a couple of godless, soulless robots.
Are you godless, Craigus? Search yourself, it's important. Are you godless?
No. No, I don't think so. I'm not.
Then you can't be soulless. Look, a man may have his leg amputated. Is his soul decreased by that loss?
No,
Not even a fraction of 1%?
of course not.
What if a man loses both legs?
A negative can't be compounded. The soul would be the same. You just get artificial legs.
You've just received an artificial body. A new body. Ageless. Tireless. Disease-free and renewable every 200 years.
I guess nothing has changed except maybe a few chemicals.
In effect.
Well, a transplant must include the soul.
No, only the memory which includes the faith that there is a soul. Whatever it is, you seem to have it.
So, once the program is complete, mankind will be effectively immortal. But there's a cost.
And birth will cease to exist too. The most precious hope of everyone.
How do you think these two R-96s would like to pick up 4 points?
You can raise them to R100s? Make them propagate themselves?
I worked it all out prior to my recent death and resurrection. I didn't want to turn it over to you until I didn't need you anymore. Now I don't, since we're all on the same side. How about it, you two? It'll take several simple operations. Hardly more difficult than removing a rib. Somebody has to be first.
Self-procreating.
It's a pretty sloppy way of doing things, but it fulfills a certain psychological need.
Paradoxical, isn't it? I spend my life seeking immortality on one hand and seeking to destroy it on the other.
Of course, the operation was a success, or you wouldn't be here.
So that was Creation of the Humanoids. How was it? Complicated. On the one hand, it has a rather interesting premise. The idea that these robots are acting mysteriously for the benefit of mankind. Obviously, they can't just say, oh, by the way, when you die, we can turn you into a robot and everything will be done hunky-dory. Knowing human nature, there'd be a little reluctance to accept that. Even Dr. Raven only did it for the premise of getting a younger body for himself. And the money, of course. And Craigus, though his actions are definitely based around a racist element, do have a certain idea and belief that the robots are holding humanity back. That we discover is, in fact, that it's entirely different. Not only are they more intelligent than humans, they can learn faster and develop faster, and they will be able to help mankind advance even further once everybody has dealt with this whole messy organic body thing. On the other hand, it's very slow paced. Characters come on stage, say their lines, leave again. In fact, stage is a pretty good definition because it's almost made like a stage play, or like an early television TV play. The sets are minimalistic, but overall it's not too bad. It tends to drag on quite a bit. You get exposition in great big dumps, and generally speaking it's kind of dull and difficult to sit through. Some of the acting isn't too bad. Craigus' sister seems to portray pretty well the idea that she cares for Pax and doesn't give a flying toss what her brother thinks about the situation. And Pax himself, as far as he's capable of, appears to be a pretty compassionate and loving partner. depending on the optional parts, of course. And generally speaking, Kragas himself does a pretty convincing performance when he realizes his true nature, even coming to realize that he was wrong in feeling like he did, because the robots have actually been working to help mankind. And his feelings about them being too like humans means that the clickers are actually undeserving of his ire because they were working to make mankind better, whereas he himself has been seemingly determined to hold it back by denying the benefits the robots can actually give to the remnants of humanity. So for an interesting premise, reasonable acting, but a tendency to drag a bit and not really have an awful lot of passion or action given the unusual stage direction, I'm going to give this 3 Maple Leafs out of 5. If you're a fan of adventure science fiction, it's not too bad, though as I said, it can be a little difficult to sit through, so fair warning there. I'm some Canadian critic, and it's time for me to recharge. Eat! Yeah, that's it.
I know who created me. Hollister Evans in the Mark 47. You have to accept your creator on faith.
Who created your creator?
Yours.